guys, welcome back to my channel and to a brand new video. Today we are doing my May reading wrap up. It truly is not a good sign that I already cannot remember the month, is it? I read a total of 25 books in May, so we have a few too many to talk to you about today. Yeah, this is going to be a long time, so buckle in, grab yourself a beverage. I will try and be quick, but it's 25 books to review. This is not going to be easy. As I did last month, and I probably will continue to do from the way forward now, I'm going to work backwards through the month, starting with my most recently finished book and working back, unless something is in a series, and then I will talk about them as a whole. First up, I read Set on You and X's and O's by Amy Leah. I'm trying to remember anything about these books, considering I literally finished this one yesterday and this one the day before, and I still don't remember much about it. Let's talk about Set on You first, as this is the first book in the influencer trilogy. This one follows Crystal, who is a social media influencer based in the gym, like a fitness influencer. And she's 250,000 followers on Instagram. She goes to the gym every single day. She is plus size rep, apparently. We'll get on to that. And then she meets Scott in the gym, who keeps stealing her equipment, being kind of like mean to her, blocking her filming. Then after hating each other and having a very steamy kiss, they go to both of them go to their individual grandparents' engagement party just to find out that their grandparents are marrying each other. Was that everything I needed to say? Most of the things I want to say about this book are spoilery, so unfortunately I cannot tell you them. So I will do my best. I didn't love this all the way through, I'll be honest. It was not my favourite read, but it was probably a 3-star. It was like an okay read until we hit the third act drama, and then I was so over it. I was done. This was the most ridiculous third act drama. Crystal had no right to treat Scott that way. She didn't even ask for permission to do the thing that she did, which meant that I thought Scott could be angry at her, not the other way around. So it was the most ridiculous third act drama that went on for way too long and took this book down to a 2. It was ridiculous. Secondly, the rep in this book is great in regards to you have a Chinese American main character. Lovely. It talks a lot about racism, which is really, really interesting, and the attitudes to Chinese people online. What I didn't love was the rep of curvy girls and plus size girls, or even mid-size rep. Because, again, maybe this is my opinion, but that girl on the cover is skinny. She is slim. That is a slim girl, okay? That is not a mid-size girl. Correct me if I'm wrong. Mid-size, I believe, is considered 14 to 16. You can't tell me that girl's not a 10, pushing it on 12 UK sizing. You cannot tell me that's not the case. Maybe you'll disagree, that's fair enough. And maybe it's just the cover art going that way, because sometimes they're not very well representative, and I get that. But I could not get on board. As a fat girl, I'm a size 18, I don't count as mid-size, I'm up. I'm in the fat girl clan, I'm plus size. And I'm fine with it. So to read about people absolutely attacking this girl, was painful, but sometimes valid, because it shows people what fat people go through. However, this book felt like it was only body positive to fat people if you were the right kind of fat person. You could only be accepted as a fat person if you were still the kind of person who goes to the gym every single day. This girl, Crystal, goes to the gym every single day. Now, I do not need to tell you, I love the gym. I do not need to tell you that fat people can be healthy. I don't need to tell you that. However, this girl should not be going to the gym every single day. That is very unhealthy. That is actually so unhealthy. You need your body to have time to rest. So, having this person preach about how health and stuff, I'm like, you're not healthy though. Your body has no time to rest. Then when she goes through something and she can't make it to the gym because she's sad, she's like hard on herself and talking about how her mental health and all this is bad. And I'm like, you should be able to miss a day or two at the gym without feeling this way. That's a problem in itself that was never addressed in this book. So maybe I read too far into it, which is fair enough. You know, I was obviously probably going to do that as someone who is large and was supposed to receive some rep in this book. That's fair enough. Maybe if you just enjoy this as a general read, if you didn't have any problems in regards to the world treating you wrong as being plus size. But I just felt like this was supposed to be body positive, and it was actually the complete opposite unless you fitted into a very slim bracket of plus size. I would say if you're a larger girl, this won't help you mentally. It won't make you feel represented. At least it didn't for me personally. I know that's probably controversial to some, and I have just rattled on about this for 8 minutes, so I'm really sorry. I will put it down and I will cut it down a bit. Now this led me on to the second book, which usually I probably would have avoided, having not loved the first book. But I have 2 copies of this, so I was like, I'm gonna try. And I will say this was a tad better. I did give this a 2.5 instead of a 2, so growth. This one follows Tara and Trevor. Tara is the sister of Crystal and Trevor is the old roommate of Scott from the first book. Tara is again a Chinese American girl, so that is really, really nice to see that representation. And there is no discussion on plus size, mid size, any sort of size rep. It does not take place in the gym. There are a couple of gym scenes. Fine. No problem at all. The problem I had with this book was not because it was offensive in any way. It was just the fact that it was kind of bland. Like, so Tara is a bookstagrammer, and for a start it was really, really cringe and cheesy, which some people can really lean into and I just cannot. So again, a personal problem. I just found it a bit cringy. But the big problem was that Trevor and Tara were going on a mission to execute meet cutes or second chance romances with her exes, but none of these exes even went past a conversation. None of them. Whereas I would have really have liked to have seen, especially for the size of a book, some sort of attempt rather than just meeting a guy and sacking him off. But she also could just message them. Like, there was no like clever way of trying to meet these people again. She just messaged them. And it kind of came across a bit creepy at one point because one guy didn't have social media and she messaged him on LinkedIn, and I was like, ooh, it's getting weird. It's getting so strange. And I also don't like the trope that men can't talk about their feelings. Scott and Tara, I think, are talking at one point, and they're saying that about how Trevor doesn't really talk about his feelings because it's just a stigma that comes with men, which is so valid. Like, and it's a stigma that we should be fighting to change because men do feel like they can't talk about their feelings. So could we address it in the book a bit more? Like, it felt like it was really brushed over. Like, so weirdly brushed over. I don't know. The 2 books seem to just give issues for the sake of issues, and I just really did not vibe with them at all. I think Amy Lear just is not an author for me, and that is perfectly okay. I won't pick up the 3rd book. This will be for some people. It just really wasn't for me, which is a shame because it was on my anticipated books of 2023 list. But yeah, it can't be helped. I didn't know that she wouldn't be for me. Now I know. These were a buddy read with Kira, so I had a really good time buddy reading these. They made a lot more fun. Before that, I read Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This has been on my TBR for a year. More than, because I had it for my birthday in April 2022. So it was about time that I got to this. We follow Lily, who is 17 years old and lives in America in 1954. She lives in Chinatown. She's a Chinese American girl, and obviously that means she faces a lot of racism, sexism, all the things, but she's also a lesbian, and so obviously there's a lot of homophobia as well. This story broke my heart. This was so good. I gave it 4 stars, but I think I'm even being harsh with it. Lily's story was incredible. The Telegraph Club is a basically like a gay bar with drag acts. Obviously there's a huge stigma about people who go in there that are gay, and so she obviously sneaks out at night with her friend to go to this bar, and it's like a huge secret for her. You just experience Lily going through the whole of the racism, homophobia, uncovering her identity as an LGBT woman. It's just a really beautiful story, especially to see someone covering the world of drag, and oh, I just really loved this. I really, really did. The only thing I absolutely hated about this book was the fact that we get her mum's POV and her aunt's POV. Very, very rarely. They're not often. It's like twice, I think. Twice or three times. Which I found boring at the time. But by the end, like, I hated. I was like, I don't want their POVs. I hate them. It just kind of ruined the story for me. But I guess that's kind of the point. But it felt as though, I try not to spoil anything again. It felt as though they were trying to make you sympathise with their feelings and their thoughts. And I can't sympathise with that. I'm sorry, I don't care. It's like when people say old people, it's just how they were brought up. I mean, I get the sentiment, but we've all got to change, we've all got to evolve, and we've all got to be open to the concept that we're wrong sometimes. So I didn't really sympathise if that was what the intention was. But I absolutely adored this. This will be a reread for me so many times, I imagine, which has shocked me so much because when I went into it, I was kind of like, this is YA. I am definitely out of my YA era. I'm a bit nervous about this. This was so, so good. And there's apparently a sequel Lauren told me about. I'll be reading that as well. I'm just so happy that this was a win for me. And the cover is absolutely stunning as well, which is just a bonus. The end broke me a little bit, so that was unexpected. And I loved the messages. I loved everything about this story. If I can encourage you to pick up any LGBT book in Pride Month, I would really encourage this one because it's got so much rep to it and I loved it. I picked up a poetry collection which was Homebody by Rupi Kaur. This one follows 4 stages: the mind, heart, rest, awake. There was a huge trigger warning that I didn't really expect in this book for sexual assault and rape of child. Rupi Kaur, I think, is talking about her own experiences as a child from gross young ages. That was very unexpected for me on a lovely afternoon with my cup of coffee, and I was crying and I felt a bit sick. So I do want to warn anyone going in that kind of jumps straight into it and in the most heart-wrenching way. Like, I just felt like I needed to put a warning out there because this is the first Rupi Kaur book I've read, and I don't know if there's any more, like if Milk and Honey or the Sunflower one, I don't know if it's got that in there as well, but if it hasn't, a warning. This was really, really nice. I didn't rate it. I never really know how to rate poetry. I either know I didn't like it or I know I loved it. This, I just kind of enjoyed my experience, but I didn't have any strong feelings to it, but that would be a lie because I was crying and upset. But that was more because like if someone else's experience was just so heart-wrenching to read. There was a lot on love and a lot on depression, a lot on social anxiety, and I really, really enjoyed that. But I don't have a lot to say. Like, it's not my most favourite poetry collection that I've read. Trying to find the books amongst the scattered mess I have next to me is just not happening. I'm not gonna lie. Next up, I read In a Dark, Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. I buddy read this with Connor, which of course made it a lot more fun to read. This follows Nora, who seems to have a lot of trauma from school. She's like living a very isolated life, and she kind of talks about how school was a really hard time for her and something happened, but you don't know what. Then, out of nowhere, she gets an email from Flo, who's a friend of Claire's, asking her to come to Claire's hen party. Nora is a bit confused because she hasn't seen Claire in 10 years, and now Claire's getting married. She hasn't been invited to the wedding, so she's like, why am I going to this hen party? She messages her other friend who's also been invited and says, are you going? And they make a pact to go together. So go together they do. This hen party takes place in Flo's aunt's house, kind of in the middle of nowhere, just surrounded by the woods in this creepy cottage. That would have been a perfect setting for a very creepy read. This did not live up. I know, I had quite a few bad reads at the end of this month. I do have better reads at the beginning of the month, so bear with me through all these negative ones. This was a 2 stars for me. Ruth Ware is not my author. I need to accept this. I have one more Ruth Ware book on my TBR, and I don't think I'm going to buy any more because I have tried to read a lot of her books now and I've not liked any. This feels like the only way I can describe it is the kind of thriller crime that your mum would read. Unless you are a mum, and then I'm really sorry. But you know, like, I suppose it's like my mum always read Danielle Steele growing up. I would never think to read Danielle Steele. Never. This Ruth Ware feels like a thriller author for my mum. Sorry, mum, if you're watching this. That sounds really offensive, but that's the only way I can describe it. Like, it doesn't do anything for me. It's anticlimactic, it's boring, the characters are bland. I did not like it. First of all, there was a character in this that had a child, and I don't understand why she was even part of the story, because she left halfway through and I was like, oh, she's coming back to the story somehow. What? No, she didn't. Sorry to spoil, but she didn't. So what was the point of her being in the story at all? I don't quite know what the whole point of bringing her in was. Like, it was just a waste of time. The big reveal of what the thing was in school that caused all of this drama was the most ridiculous thing I've ever read. I don't know. I didn't know. I was like, are you joking? All of this for that? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like a quarter of teenagers go through this at this point. It's not that big of a deal. I don't know. I'm trying not to be too negative because I'm aware I've been quite negative in this video so far, but it was not a book for me. Again, I really was excited for a creepy cottage in the woods. That to me is everything, and the woods was like no part of it. Like one point in the beginning she went running through the woods and I was like, oh, I was like, she is gonna find something, she's gonna come across. And at one point they even said like there's like a mile from the house there's like a town, and that's the only place, this isolated town. Tell me that wasn't an opportunity for like a cult. Tell me it wasn't. And instead, nothing. Bland. I'm sorry. It was just, I'm passionate about it because it was just such a letdown. Like, this could have been so good. But instead, it just kind of came across as like a middle-aged thriller. I guess I'm just not the demographic. So I am sorry for not loving this. I only have one more book from her, which I think is The Many Lives of Mrs. Westaway? Nope. The Death of Mrs. Westaway. That I will read because me and Connor are buddy reading it, and then I'm done. Somebody stop me if I try and buy another one. I think I was cursed this month because my next read I have been reading since February and I did not like it, which is, bear with, okay? Because even I couldn't process my emotions on this book. It broke my heart. But that would be Zodiac Academy Heartless Sky. I've not taken out my bookmarks because I actually had to read it by ebook after a while because it was so bad. If you do not know, Zodiac Academy is a fantasy series following two twins, Tori and Darcy Vega, who are the long lost heirs to the throne. And when they get to the school, there are 6 heirs who have been trained their whole life for this after they took over after the supposed death of the twins. So they're not very happy with the return of the 2 queens and they are going to fight them for it. And then it's a long ass, I think it's going to be 11 book series or something, experience. Now don't get me wrong, the first 6 books are magnificent. 4, 5 stars all the way through. The first book, maybe not the best, but like entertaining. The rest of them, phenomenal. I have encouraged everybody to pick up the series. I have a whole shelf dedicated to this series. So when I say I didn't like this, it's a shock to me. There just feels like there was a lack of love for this book. It feels like they started the series and was really enjoying it, and now it's just becoming the point where they know they have to wrap it up, so they're like just pulling it in for as long as possible to get more cash. Controversial opinion, but that's how it felt. This felt like a cash grab book. It was a filler book. This book is 989 pages. 900 of them, nothing happened. We were preparing for a battle when nobody really prepared. Then we have 89 pages, probably less if I'm being honest, of actual action that, number one, was reversed during the scene. Like somebody, I won't say who, but somebody was ripped apart at the chest, their body coming in 2, so dead. Like, you didn't survive that, did you? And then a chapter later, they are being carried to be nursed back to health. Not if your chest was ripped in 2, you're not, okay? We're not going to talk about it. There is 2 things that happen at the end of this book that are vital to the actual reading experience. You could just Google them. One is a big death that was already spoiled for me, so to be honest, it didn't have the emotional impact it should have had, but also I don't think it would have because I don't believe that they're not going to somehow bring the character back through the use of the veil or anything like that because they've already done it so many times in the series. The other thing is somebody got taken hostage or prisoner. just like they did with somebody else a couple of pages ago, like a couple of books ago. It's by the pretty much the same character, kind of like the bad guy. Like, and I cannot talk about this book without spoiling it, so I'm not, like, I have so many more things to say, but I'm not going to because I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I'm already, like, teetering on the edge, so silence from me. But this was disappointing. I'm sure everything will be reversed. There was no excuse for anything to have been in this book because you literally could have put these pages in the next book and deleted all of this. Controversial opinions. Although I say that, I did go through the reviews on Goodreads and a lot of people said the exact same thing, so maybe I'm not on my own here. I think they've taken the humour too far in this series as well. So I think a few people have said that this series was funny, and the authors have kind of taken it and ran with it because they've taken the humour too far. For example, there's a character in here called Geraldine. She's been in the series, you know, throughout. She's fine. Some people like her, some people don't. But she had this term in the first book, buttery bagels. She really likes buttery bagels. Why is it the only thing these characters eat now? Come on. You're telling me in the situation that these characters are in at this point, they have access to buttery bagels every 5 minutes. Ugh. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but I don't know how to process my anger at this story. I really don't. It's not that I hated it. Again, I gave it 2.5. It was, you know, close enough to being a 3 to say I enjoyed my time. But I do feel frustrated and annoyed by the things that were in this book because it felt like a waste of my time. It felt like a waste of the author's time. And yeah, I am disappointed. I feel like the main bad person in this book should have been killed off a long time ago. There is something even better that could be the big bad, and I would rather have that than that other person. Can you tell I'm trying to be vague? I just don't see why we're still going. I don't see... There was also a sacrifice in this book where two people sacrificed themselves to gain the other person time. So I thought they were going to fight. No. They stood there and were like, I'm done. What did you gain? What did you gain? 3 seconds? What good is that to anyone? Like, at least try and fight. Like, at least buy them time. Oh. You know what? I'm sorry. I'm going to put it over here. But if you're like a Zodiac Academy fan and you want to hate on me for this, please don't. I am a huge Zodiac Academy fan. Trust me, I went in with the best intentions. On the vice versa to that, I read Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Now, obviously, every single human being at this point seems to be reading this book. So I was like, screw the TBR. I'm getting on it. And I went on Scribd, and the audiobook's on Scribd if you want to read it. It's a very good audiobook, I'd say, which is rare. We follow Violet, who is a 20-year-old who has her whole life grown up training to become a scribe, who is like a scholar, like they work in a library. That's been her whole life goal because it's kind of like Divergent, where you have quadrants that you have to select, until her mum, the big bad queen, says, no, you're becoming a dragon rider. And she's like, the thing that like most people die from trying to become. I'm not trained for that. But okay, her mum's like, you're doing it. And she's like, okay. And then she goes into it, and when she gets there, there is Xaden, who is the son of the... what do you call them? The like rebellion. He's the son of the big rebellion man who did, you know, who brought about the rebellion. And his father was killed by Violet's mother. But Violet's brother was killed by Xaden's dad. So it's kind of like they're big enemies. They hate each other. Xaden wants to kill her. She just kind of wants to survive because she's going through all of this when she's just supposed to be sitting in a library. I'll just say, this story just keeps going. I was sat outside and my phone was inside, but I was connected by my headphones. So I didn't know how long I'd been listening to this book for. I didn't know how long was left. And every time I thought the book was finishing, I was just getting into a new chapter. I wasn't even halfway through at one point and I thought I was finished. It keeps going. I was so worried that this was going to be overhyped because, I mean, it's likely, isn't it, with BookTube and Book Talk. People can overhype books, and I think we all get caught up in it. I think, my personal opinion is this is so worth the hype. I gave this 5 stars. This was very, very interesting. It kind of gave, it was definitely giving ACOTAR, it was definitely giving Divergent, but it also gave me a little bit of Gothicana in its own way, if anyone's read that. I just really like the whole thing. I love the dragon elements. I love dragons in my fantasy. I love the fight for your life element. I love the Xaden rival tension, sexual attraction part. Every revelation that came about in this book, I loved even more. The last sentence, wild. Cannot wait for the next book. Can't believe I loved it so much. I usually think that books like this are going to be overhyped, and usually I'm like, it was okay. No, this was so good. I'm so surprised. Definitely worth picking up, I would say. I've seen a lot of TikToks of people being like, I'm trying not to get distracted by my TBR, but Fourth Wing, it's worth getting distracted for, I'm not gonna lie. I cannot wait to get a physical copy and annotate the hell out of it. I'm not gonna lie. On a reread. That'd be so much fun. Anyway, I'm just glad I liked a book, because we were getting a bit much on all the negative reviews. Next, I read Mr. Wrong Number and The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. So let's start with Mr. Wrong Number. It's brother's best friend trope. She's like got to get her life back on track. She's gone through like a big breakup. She's lost her job. She actually set fire to her apartment. It's been like a whole thing. So she's had to move back to her hometown. And she's moving into her brother's apartment, who her brother kind of lives with his best friend. And so she sleeps in the office on an airbed, like proper like got nothing, you know, starting from the bottom. And she's a journalist. And then one day a number texts her, says, "What are you wearing?" And she starts texting this number back, and she's like, "Wrong number," and he is. But they end up having like a really nice relationship or friendship. But she like really likes him. Turns out, naturally, that it is the brother's best friend / her roommate. And he works that out. I didn't dislike the book. I gave it 3 stars. I think it was fun. I think it was enjoyable. I really liked the concepts in my romances of a person like starting over in a new town or having to like rebuild their life. I really like books like that. My issue with this book was that Olivia felt like a child. Like, you cannot convince me that she is an adult trying to live her adult life. Like, I actually don't believe you. She came across so childlike. She came across so whiny and annoying. And I was like, there's no way that this man likes you, because you're acting like a 2-year-old. Meanwhile, he's got his whole life together. There's just no way. I know Lynn Painter writes a lot of YA. And I've heard they're very good YA. I think this book was kind of stuck between being YA and adult. I know it could be new adult. I'm aware of the new adult genre. But it didn't feel new adult. It felt like she was trying to write an adult book and just kept writing YA and couldn't differentiate the character age. It did take me out of the story a lot, but it was a fun read that I did have an entertaining time with. Same with The Love Wager. It was fun. You follow Jack and Hallie. Jack's sister is getting married. And Hallie's the bartender at the wedding. And they end up having a one-night stand. Hallie logs on 2 dating apps that her sister has set up for her, and she ends up coming across Jack, and she's like, "Oh, hey." And they just end up chatting, and they create a wager that the first person to fall in love, one of them gets their air miles, and the other one gets a signed football or something, a signed football jersey. And so they're both on the hunt to find love and deal with the annoyingness of dating apps. And in return for being each other's wingmans, they kind of maybe fall for each other. I really enjoyed a lot of this book. Like, I really, really enjoyed the tropes. We had fake dating, we had one bed trope, which was really, really fun. There was a lot of jealousy, which I really, really like. We had these really cute taco moments. After every date that didn't go well, they would go to the taco truck together and have tacos, and I really, really, really liked that part. That was really, really sweet. I could read a whole book on just those moments. My only gripe, really, but it was, other than the writing style, because I had the same issue with the writing style that I had with the first, was that these guys would text each other all the time, even when they were together. And so they'd be at a dinner table on a date together, and they'd stop what they were doing. They'd be having like a really cute moment. They'd stop what they were doing, both look down at their phones and start texting each other. Does that not give you the ick? Because that gives me severe ick. Like, thinking of them sitting there, And look at them as an outsider. They're both just sat on their phone at the dinner table, smiling at their phones, when they're right in front of each other. No. That's like me filming a video and while you're watching, texting you my Goodreads review. Well, what's the point of me being here then? I just felt like there was a bit of ick there, just for that moment. Other than that, it was a really entertaining story. It was a good time. I did enjoy. So it's not a negative review. It's just that, like, I can't get past that icky part. I really can't. Next, I read She Is a Haunting by Tran Tan Tran. This is a YA horror following Jade, who needs money to go to university. So she contacts her father, who left home, who's redoing up this house, and he says, I'll give you the money if you come to the house for the summer. And so she says okay, and her and her sister pack up and they go. And then the house is really haunted and creepy. This would be so good if you are the YA age group category and you want to get into horror, because this is kind of spooky. I definitely think this would be a really good book for that age group. I just didn't have a good time myself, but I can definitely see how good this would be. Like, you have a lot of familial ties, it's LGBT, which is brilliant for the younger audience. A lot of topics talked about, like racism, homophobia, just a lot of things that I think a younger audience needs to read. So I'm so glad that this is available to that intended audience. But for me, not a good time. However, I did give it 2 stars, by the way. I didn't love this book. I just found it kind of weird. But if you're into weird books, this might be for you. There was one scene, I can't even think about it. Actually, now that I've got like a split scalp, it makes it even worse. She was brushing her sister's hair and her sister was wincing at the pain, and there was a giant larvae stuck in her. It's actually affected me so much that every time I go outside, I wear a hat. I bought a hat, and I wear a hat because it affected me so much, and now I'm scared of having a larva in my head. And at one point, I got sunburn from being at a wedding, and I was like, my whole time I was like, oh my god, my head's out. And then I got home, and the next day was sunburned, and I brushed my hair, and I felt pain, and I was like, ah! And I made Liam check my head for larvae. So I suppose if that's what you're looking for, it's a good book. It's a very good book. I just think it's a little weird, but I can't pinpoint my reasons for not liking it. But it seems to be quite a common thing. Like, it doesn't have the best reviews, but again, I do really think you'd enjoy this if you were into YA. And again, if you were younger end of YA maybe, I do think there's a lot of important topics. So I don't want to talk too negatively about it. For the purpose of speeding this up, I'm going to skip some of the romance novellas that I read. I read quite a few this thing. I read Mother's Day by Alicia Qua, Hell's Gate and the sequel. I'm going to skip those. If you want to see my thoughts and feelings, you can check over my Goodreads. I'm always reading romance novellas. I just don't have the time to talk about them. We've already been chatting for an hour. I gotta speed this up. So I'm really sorry for not talking about those. But again, Goodreads is always linked down below. You can find my thoughts and feelings there. I read a lot of Darcy Coates this month, so you will see another couple of books from her. But the latest one that I read was From Below by Darcy Coates. This is a under the sea set horror. I follow 2 different timelines. One is of the SS Arcadia as it's on its journey, on its cruise journey, and we follow one of the ship team members as they kind of watch the descent of the SS Arcadia on the lead up to its sinking. Then we follow the modern day, where we follow Cove, who is a team leader to a diving team to check out the SS Arcadia to make a documentary on it. Basically a replacement for the Titanic, but the Titanic does exist in this world because they do reference it. But it's pretty much the exact same thing because it was also sunk on the 20th of April, which is, the Titanic sunk on the 15th of April. So like it's very similar. But it's really, really cool. Like, you follow a lot of the teammates and you get a lot of time to get to know them because of how thick it is. As they descend onto the SS Arcadia, it's paranormal, it's very entertaining. I didn't like the explanation at the end. It was the same as another book I've read like this, and I really did not, I don't like that. I like things to just be as they are. I wish I could explain that better, but again, without spoiling, it's just not possible. But I had a really good time with this. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed the descriptions of the room, just like Darcy Coates does in her haunted house novels. You still get really nice descriptions of the rooms, and like there's a lovely description of like the stairs, referencing it to a gothic house. I like the like sci-fi elements, I guess, when they were discussing things about the suits and stuff. I don't know, I just liked it. I didn't love the past timeline that much, which is odd because it should have been the most entertaining part, but I did find it borderline boring. But that's just being harsh and critical about it. I still really enjoyed the story. I will definitely be rereading it. It was a very entertaining time. Then I did a hell of a lot of reading, oh my god, of Tessa Bailey for a Tessa Bailey 24-hour reading blog, which you can find linked up there and down below. So we will talk through them. I had 3 that I liked and 3 that I didn't. First of all, I read It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line and Sinker, which are 2 books in the same series set in a small town, which is very fun. I'm really sorry if the angle changed. I hit the tripod. Typical me. So in this one we follow Piper, who is a famous, very rich socialite who kind of has gone a bit far with her antics and gets in a lot of trouble. So as a result, her stepdad sends her to a small town where her father grew up and passed away, Westport. And when she's there, she finds out that she's gonna have to like live in this very dingy little old pub, and a very different life to what she's used to, but her sister does go with her to make this a little easier. When she gets there, she bumps into Brendan, who kind of like underestimates her from the offset. Like, he's a bit cruel and he's like, you're not gonna be able to like manage this. And he just puts her down quite a lot, and she's not having it. As she kind of discovers more about herself, more about her past, about her father, and turns into maybe a small town girly as opposed to the big city lights. I really like this. I gave it a 4 stars. I can't even remember the one thing that like made me not give it a 5. I think it was the sex scenes? I don't think I like Tessa Bailey's sex scenes. I can't remember though. You will see if you watch that vlog. I did talk about it. I talked about a lot of detail about this one. I really enjoyed it. Had a very good time. Will 100% be rereading this probably over and over again. Same with this one, which follows Piper's sister, Hannah, as it's post the events of this one, and she's kind of gone back to the city, and then she's making movies, and she suggests the set for the new movie to be set in Westport. So she comes back and stays with Fox, who is Brendan's best friend and a bit of a womanizer. Since Hannah left Westport, Fox and her have been having like a texting friendship. Like, they're really good friends. They text all the time. So she's going to be staying in his guest house, and things bloom. I love this. These were so good. I gave them both 4 stars. I had a very good time. I will 100% be rereading them. And if you're looking for a small town romance, this is it. I just wish it was more small towny. That's all. But I really enjoyed this. Then I read My Killer Vacation, and I don't think it's uncommon to say that this was not fun. Basically, it's a murder mystery / romance following a woman who I can't remember, but she comes across a body in the Airbnb in Cape Cod that she's staying at with her brother, and then a bounty hunter comes to solve the murder, and they end up trying to solve it together. It was cringy. It was gross. It was age gap, which is fine. It's not my favourite, but it's fine. But the old man just gave creepy... Old man, it's not very fair. The older gentleman just gave creepy, dirty biker man ogling over a young woman, talking about her innocence as a school teacher and so young. And the first thing he noticed, like, sees when he looks at her is her boobs. Very gross, very weird. Didn't vibe with that. Very over-sexualized from the offset, which I don't like at all. Yeah, it just gave bad vibes all around. The murder mystery was not entertaining. It was not fun. I know loads of people hate this, but I really did think that there was no way that you could do a murder mystery not well, but this was not good. Didn't have a good time. And then we had the Hot and Hammered series. I would love to talk to you about these books individually, but if I'm being completely honest, I don't remember anything about them. The only one I remember something about was, Love Her or Lose Her, which I think followed Rosie and her husband Dominic. They already are married, and it's like a they split up at the beginning of this book and then they try and kind of like fix their marriage. This was kind of entertaining. I gave this 3 stars. I really, really liked it, but I wouldn't like read it again. But these two I really, really didn't like. I gave them 2 stars. Tessa Bailey is obviously a hit or miss author. I want to read more from her and see what I think. Every single book though, the sex scenes gave me cringe in all of her books. The men have this odd obsession, except for in this one, which is probably why I liked it, with when they're doing the deed, giving like whole essays. Like, I don't want to hear you chat about why you love her and everything and what you're going to do for her and the way you're going to change while you're doing the deed. Like, I don't want to hear that. Like, can we shut up? It takes me right out of it. I cannot enjoy it. It's kind of just gives me cringe and ick. So that's a lot of the reason I don't like Tessa Bailey's writing. But if the story's good enough to make up for it, then fair enough. But because the guy in this barely ever spoke, like he's not a big talker of his feelings, it worked for me just brilliantly because I was like, I never have to deal with that cringe. Brilliant. Next, I read Gallows Hill by Darcy Coates. This follows Margot. Her mum and dad pass away, and so she has to go back to Gallows Hill where she grew up and was left. Like, her parents like gave her to her grandmother and never saw her again. So she kind of holds a lot of resentment to her family. And so when she goes back to Gallows Hill to take over the home and the business, because there's a winery, she goes there with the intention of just seeing it. She doesn't have the intention of staying, but she ends up doing so, and then things start to happen on Gallows Hill. She uncovers secrets about the place, uncovers folktale stories, creepy things start to happen. This story is what? It's so good, don't get me wrong. I gave it a 4.5. It's brilliant. I love Darcy's writing, and this was borderline too scary for me. I would say, I wouldn't call this ghosts. I would say this is more zombie. Not that the word zombies ever used, but it definitely felt like they were zombies, not ghosts. But it was so gross. Oh my god, it was so gross. I was really off put by this story. But yeah, a mix of ghost and zombie. I really enjoyed the revelation at the end. I thought that was really well done, and I was like, oh, I should have seen that coming from the beginning, and I didn't. I really liked the set. I really liked what I think was the most scary part about this. In all of Darcy Coates' books so far, and most paranormal horrors that I've read, when there is somebody else on the scene, it kind of alleviates that feeling. Like, the minute somebody else comes into the house, you're calmer because things tend to stop happening. When this is happening to everybody, it kind of just makes it even worse. Like, I was absolutely petrified, and I was reading this at night, like, in my pants. Like, I couldn't sleep. I was having nightmares. So that just shows it's a very good horror. It was very, well, I mean, I'm a scaredy cat, so it's a good horror to me. But I'm quite an easily scared person. I'm going to continue to devour all of Darcy Coates' writing and books. And I hope that I never run out of books to read from her. I will, but then I'll just reread them all. It's fine. Then I read Dial A for Aunties, which is a murder mystery fun romance book. Although it's not really a murder mystery. The woman, the main character of the book, whose name I can't remember, I'm sorry, she murders someone, and then her and her family have to like cover up the mystery. Like, they have to cover up the murder and try and get away with it, all while attending this wedding, and like they're like in charge of the wedding. Like, they own a wedding business, and they're doing this wedding, and then the main woman's ex is the owner of the venue of the wedding, so they're trying to like rekindle their romance while she's trying to hide a body. It's chaos, absolute chaos, but so fun, and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of like, I think they're a Hispanic family, which meant there was kind of a lot of talks on that, which was really interesting, and a fun book in all. The characters were really enjoyable. I just didn't like the end revelation really at all. I actually found it to like kind of ruin the experience for me a little bit, but I had a good time overall. I gave it 3.5. Like, I'm glad I listened to it on audio, which kept it fun and fresh. It was entertaining. I have no thoughts and feelings other than that though. Next, I read The Haunting of Blackwood House by Darcy Coates, and I absolutely love this cover. Just a side note, phenomenal. This was probably my favourite Darcy Coates so far. It obviously got a 5 stars. It was amazing. You follow Mara, who as a child, her parents were spiritualists, and she thought they would like basically con people. Like, they'd force her to be a conduit for ghosts, and they'd like put on the performances, you know how people do. and she kind of ran away from her family and was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Now she is kind of broke, she's looking for a new house, and she gets a really, really good deal on Blackwood house. Does nobody learn that if you get a really good deal on a big house in the middle of nowhere, you should not take it? Anyway, there's a lot of backstory to this. It was like a serial killer killed a lot of his victims here, killed himself. Then a lot of families have killed themselves ever since here. Her boyfriend Neil is like, are you kidding me? He's like the really religious person. No way. Come and live with me and my mum. And she's like, no, you guys are Christians and I don't do religion. No way. A whole thing. Then Mara moves into this house and begins to uncover pure terror inside of the house, and maybe comes to accept that her childhood was not as fake as it seemed. Oh, it's a fun time. I think this perfectly balances a mixture of a woman trying to get her life together and support herself with the pure terror of paranormal horror that I just adore. Mara is a great main character as well. Like, the way she was in denial the whole time had me howling. Like, the most out there, obvious horror thing whatever would happen, and she'd be like, it's just the wind. She sees a body and she's like, it's just a trick of the light. I'm like, is it, girl? Is it? Like, she's so in denial about her childhood that she refuses to accept what she can see. And I was howling. Like, I thought that was brilliant. I loved it. And I'm gonna be honest, Neil, her boyfriend, stole the show. Stole the absolute show. I think he was just supposed to be a typical side character who's a cinnamon roll. You weren't really supposed to think that much of him. I loved him with my whole being. He was so besotted with Mara. He was obsessed with her and I loved it. He would do anything for her. But he also respected her boundaries, and then he was just, oh, he was so cute. Like, he really just stole the show for me, and I'll take another book, please, with Mara and Neil. I don't care if it's a novella. I would like to see it, please. Thank you. I'll take it. I just want more content from them so badly. And this will be, without a doubt, reread a million times. I have no doubt about it. I love this book so much. Definitely a contender for one of the best books of the year. The last book that I'm actually going to talk to you about today is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Malors. This was the one I read at the beginning of the month, so my memory is a little bit chalky on it, but bear with me. We follow Cleo as she's on the way home from a party, and she lives in New York, and she's kind of coming to the end of her visa, and she's thinking about what she's going to do next, when she meets Frank, and they kind of just hit it off that night on New Year's Eve, chatting. And then they kind of flash forward in a whirlwind 6-month romance. They end up getting married. Then you kind of follow the story of their marriage and the crumbling and the downfall of them, which is the most heartbreaking thing to read because these characters destroy each other. And the whole time, I loved them together and I wanted them to be together, and they obviously loved each other and wanted to be together, and it just wouldn't work. And everything wouldn't work. I actually talked about this in a vlog and I ended up sobbing on the internet. Not my finest moments, and I had to leave it in, of course. This brought so much emotion. This was so sad. I agree with everything. Like, I agree with how this ended and stuff, as much as I didn't want it to end that way and I'm upset about it. So I kind of give it a 4.5 instead of a 5 so I could be bitter. It was a very, very, very good read. I'm not sure it's one I'll reread, because it kind of broke my heart so much that I just don't think I can put myself through it again. So I might have to unhaul this at some point because I just don't want this reminder on my shelves. But it was definitely really, really good. And if you want to cry or you want to have like a heartbreaking romance and not really a romance, this is the one. This is the one. So those are all the books that I wanted to talk to you about that I read in May. I hope you liked this video. I had a very mixed month. Like, at the beginning, I was having 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, just like the end of last month. And then it kind of went downhill and now it's not doing so hot. So maybe I need to renew my energy for the coming month and hopefully get some 5 stars going on in here because it's not going so well. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was a long one. Let me know what your thoughts were on any of these books if you've read them, or if there's any of these you're going to pick up now. Let me know and I shall speak to you in the next video. Bye!